I mean, people know me as Lake, but my real name is Leighton. Born and raised actually in Gardena, California. I was actually born at Kaiser in Harbor City. Grew up right on Cashmere. Grew up going to 8-Day every day after school. Grew up going to Perchie, Raleigh Park. Rode my first mini bike at Raleigh Park. Got my first fight at Raleigh Park. Played baseball at Raleigh. Just really grew up in Gardena my whole life, really. After that, moved around a little bit, you know, like any little kid from South Central or from Los Angeles in general. So I lived a little bit of everywhere after that. 10th grade year, moved to Atlanta. My father had actually got transferred from his job, so I was sent out there to live with him. My mom really couldn't, I don't want to say control me, but at the time I was acting up a little bit. So I needed that discipline in my life. So moved, kicked it with my dad, 2 years. At the time, I developed a relationship when I lived in LA with the boys. That's how I got involved in music. You know, they're from Carson. So they used to dance at Venice Beach, and I used to see them every time I went to Venice Beach, and I ended up developing a relationship. And they ended up actually moving to Atlanta when I moved to Atlanta. So I don't know if y'all familiar with them, but that was one of the first like black boy bands from California. If you go back and look them up, there you know who they were. Yeah. But yeah, when you get a chance, just check them out. But that's who really introduced me into music. Like, other than my mom, you know what I'm saying? My mom was like super influential in like playing music consistently, you know. And just growing up in them households, you know what I'm saying? Going to your grandma's house, your aunt's house, you know. My grandma lived off of Imperial in Vermont, which is in the Denver Lanes. So all my uncles and all them was from there. And then, you know, me growing up in Gardena, is shotgun everywhere. So I grew up over there a lot too. And then for a period of time, my mom moved to 63rd and West, which is, you know, so I was consistently surrounded by, you know, different things, different gangs, different people just like approaching me about stuff, like, and different influences. But like, I learned a lot in those instances, and a lot of that actually helped me, you know, throughout my like transition and moving into Atlanta, you know what I'm saying, and just knowing how to navigate early and actually being like a little more grown than the average 15, 16-year-old, you know. Right. So moved out here, ended up going to Morehouse, because my cousin, who's actually from LA, was going to Morehouse the year before. So I used to come and kick it with him a lot. And my female cousin, actually, she went to St. Bernard's, and she ended up going to Clark. So when I was a senior in high school, I would go mess with them on the weekends. And I just fell in love with it. It was cool, all black school. You know, being from LA, as ignorant as it sounds, you know, when you see like a gathering or a big, large group of black people, like, your first instinct is that something bad is gonna happen. You know what I mean? And I was seeing all these kids kick it with each other every day, and there wasn't no fights ever. Like, it was just beautiful women, you know what I'm saying, young dudes from different places. It seemed like they were doing so much progressive stuff, so I ended up going to school there. That's really where I developed most of my music relationships, because at the time I was going to school there. Bobby Valentino was going to school there. Mace was going to Clark at the time. Drama was going to Clark. Cannon was going to Clark. Who else was going to school with us? Keisha Knight Pulliam was at Spelman. Shaka Zulu had just graduated from Morehouse. I think Metro Boomin was just coming in to Morehouse. It was just a ton of like good musical energy in general just around, you know what I mean? So I really just took that energy, developed relationships. Like, everybody tried to rap, that didn't work. And the first person to actually give me an opportunity in the music stuff was Mace. Just from developing a friendship, I actually got cool with him during the time he was about to retire. So going into Double Up, which was his second album, that's when we became like super close. And then he quit, and we just remained friends for a few years. And then after that, he decided he wanted to do the Welcome Back album, and he asked me if I wanted to work with him. And me, of course, I thought I was going to end up rapping with him, and I'll never forget Kuda Love, who I owe a lot of it to just for this conversation. He pulled me to the side. He's the dude that found Mace and found Biggie. But he pulled me to the side, and he was like, look, all these dudes over here trying to rap. He was like, there's a million other jobs out here, and there's ways for you to get money in this music industry. He was like, you got to decide what you want to do. And I'll never forget, I went home that night, and I never rapped again. I was like, I'm not fucking with rap. I'm gonna listen to this dude because it seems like he's just as paid. You know what I mean? I didn't really like being in the spotlight already. I was comfortable in my own skin. I didn't need really like no fame or attention. So I started shadowing him and this dude by the name of Ed Holmes and kind of just trying to like navigate and figure out how to do the assistant thing, the management thing, the road management thing day to day. And they actually put me as Mace's day to day. So that's the first person that gave me a shot. And then from then, went on to work with Rockefeller Camp State Property, Beanie Siegel, Freeway, who I work with, managed with Ryan Press, who's actually the head of Warner Chappell Publishing right now. Worked with him for a few years, worked with Bobby again for a few years because we developed a relationship in school. And then finally, me and Drama, since we've been friends forever, we've worked together consistently, but we finally partnered up, me, him, and Cannon, and developed Generation Now, and that's where we at now. It was different because my dad didn't even move to he didn't move to Atlanta. He moved to this city called Fayetteville, which is like 20 minutes outside the city. So it was real country, you know what I'm saying? They really didn't really know like what it was. And at the time, I was so mad that I was there. Me and my mother had gotten to, not an argument per se, but I used to always tell my mom why I would go live with my dad. Like any kid at that age that would, that would just talk crazy to their mom sometimes if they were in the wrong. And my mom called my bluff one time and actually sent me to my pops. And as much as I love kicking it with my pops during the weekend, I didn't want to leave LA. You know what I'm saying? But it was a hard transition for me. I really didn't speak to nobody for like the first month. Like it was just difficult. And then some dudes that are actually still my friends to this day, they kind of like took me out that shell. You know what I'm saying? And it really opened my eyes to a lot. You don't really, like, I didn't really converse with white families when I was in LA. I don't know if that was because I wasn't surrounded by them. I don't know if it was because they weren't my neighbors. Like I didn't really, go and have lunch with them. But, the good thing about being from California is you learn how to speak with clarity. You develop a vocabulary early, so you can go and have these conversations where you might go in the South. At the time that I was going to the South, and, they may think that the average nigga may still be talking like he's fresh off the farm. You know what I'm saying? So I think it turned out to be a good transition for me. I always went back home during the summer. So that kept my edge, you know what I'm saying? It kept my, kept everything on deck. But overall, when I look back at it now, as a 40-year-old man, it was probably the best move I've ever made in my life. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't really take a liking to just a typical business class because I felt like I already had like a cool business acumen. And at the time, politics. Well, at the time when I was saying to myself I wanted to be a lawyer. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer because they always thought I spoke well. But when I went to school and actually saw how long that shit took to actually be a lawyer, I was like, man, I ain't doing this shit. And then the more and more I was continually communicating with people, especially in the music industry out here, what I really wanted to be, I was seeing that all these niggas was high school dropouts, and no disrespect, but I was like, yo, these dudes are running multi-million-dollar companies, and these dudes don't even have a high school education. And I'm going to school with these dudes who are the valedictorian, and they're going to work for them. Like, I just really didn't understand the logic of it. But especially now, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the biggest thing I gained from that was the relationships that I developed there. Because, of course, everybody that I work with right now are people that I met right there on that yard. So that was more valuable than any class. I don't use any of the knowledge, any of the Spanish, any of the cases that I learned, Brown versus Board of Education, none of that shit matters. Like, the only thing that still matters are my relationships that I developed when I went to that school. So I kind of just kicked it with my little clique of dudes and was on them chicks at Spelman. And actually going into my junior and senior year, I was kicking it with Mace Heavy. So we had actually convinced him to come to college because he was just chilling every day. And he was seeing me and my homeboys go and come back and have all these young chicks, and he was looking like, oh shit. He was like, well, I'm gonna go to school too. So he ended up going to Clark. So that's who we kicked it with the last few years. But yeah, I never did a fraternity thing, not necessarily. Yeah, I wasn't really big on it. They were saying he was retiring, but he had just put out the record with Blackstreet, the Get Ready record. It was the second album, Double Up. and he had just moved to Atlanta. And that album hadn't come out yet. And I'll never forget, I was in the car with him the day that album came out, and Puff was having a party for that album, an album release party at Justin's. And we drove right by that shit. And I remember I was in the car like, yo, I'm about to go to Justin's with Mace. Like, I'm 21, like, Mace the hottest nigga out. You know what I'm saying? That nigga drove right by and was like, yo, I'm cool. I don't want to go. And I was like, yo, this nigga's really done with music. Like, he ain't going to his own album release party, like, at all. And I just saw the slow transition. And what's crazy is Mace had his brother with him at the time. His brother's name is BM. And he was the total opposite. While Mace was trying to be a pastor, this nigga was trying to be as crazy as you could be. So Mace had 2 cars, and his brother would take whatever car he didn't take. So if Mace took the Range, he would take the Benz. And I remember Mace used to leave him an allowance every day. And that nigga would get a 5th of Hennessy and a bag of weed every day. His brother, so I ended up kicking it a lot more with his brother than I did with Mace. But yeah, he turned it totally, no secular music. I remember I rode from Atlanta to New York with him one time, not listening to no music, just listening to him tell stories. But he's an interesting dude, you know what I'm saying? He got stories. I was actually close with Drum first. Drum used to work at this pita spot called Marco's Pita. He used to have like a head wrap and dreads and skateboard and all this shit. And he used to be a part of this rap clique called Binkus Records. And at the time, I used to be in this rap clique called Cult of Icon, and we were kind of like the hot shit on campus, you know what I'm saying? So at the time, Drum kind of wanted to spin on a record, and we wanted him to spin on a record, but he was from a different clique. So he ended up spinning on a record of ours, and we just continually crossed paths throughout our navigation throughout the music industry. Because there was a period of time where Drum was working on movie sets trying to be a AD. He worked on Baby Boy, actually, in LA. Yeah, he had moved out there. Yeah, and he was an AD, he was assistant director, like trying to help John Singleton get the shit together. He wanted to do that. And then he said, fuck it, and moved back to Atlanta. And we just kind of watched each other's navigation throughout the game. Like, I kind of watched his come up. At the time of his come up, I think I was working with Mace. As he got bigger, I was working with Rockefeller. We always worked with each other from a distance. His first single, Feds Taking Pictures of Me, my producer, Dame Grease, did that. Art of Storytelling, Part 4 with Marsha Ambrosius and Outkast. I got Marshall on that record for him. So I always worked hand in hand with him just in general, and we always crossed paths. That was when Drum came in since, had the affiliates movement at the time. And then I think after Drum did Oh My, the song he had with Fabulous and Wiz Khalifa, he had hit me and was like, yo, I need some help putting this album together at this time. I think the company had disbanded. Cannon kind of went on his own way. Sensor kind of went on his own way, and he was kind of left alone. And I helped him put Third Power together, which was the first album that me and him worked on together. And at the time, I was co-managing Bobby Valentino. And then actually, after that album, he asked me to come over full time. And that's when we did Quality Street Music, and he got his first gold plaque with My Moment. And then from there, turned into his manager. From there, I convinced them to finally do a record label, because I told them they've had the talent to do it for years. They just really haven't put their minds to it. When they actually put their minds to it, built the label, and now we're here. Ever since I was managing, I want to say at the time I was managing Freeway, but they would always tell me, yeah, Scheme is dope, you should listen to Scheme, you should listen to Scheme. And what happened was, Cannon ended up doing a tape for him when he was with BD a while back. I think BD and No ID might have had something to do with it together, but Cannon ended up doing a mixtape for him. We always followed him. And then we had come to meet with, I think we had went to LA to meet with T-Fly. That was the first artist that we were trying to sign. And in the process of signing T-Fly, we were listening to Scheme shit again, and we was like, damn, he's super dope. And we ended up signing Scheme. Scheme was actually the first artist ever signed to Generation Now. Ever. Before Uzi. People think Uzi was the first, but Scheme was the first. When we were signing him, he had did the record with Chris Brown, 36 O's. So we really thought if we had the chance to really market and promote that, with our vehicle, we would have took it to the next level, but we weren't able to take that. And at the time, the guy he was signed to seemed like, I don't want to say he was sour, that he was losing Scheme, so he didn't put as much steam into working the record. So we got it after that, and then we did Ingleworld 2, the mixtape. He was able to work with a lot of people that he wanted to work with out here, with Doug and Pee Wee and all them people that he wanted to work with from Atlanta. And then we put out the Red Coupe single, and that worked too. I think we're just in the process of trying to make that transition of him like being comfortable writing hit records for somebody else and dedicating that same effort and time into making his career as an artist something else, you know. And as a record label, we can't really be, not even as a record label, as a record label, I could want him to be more involved in that, but as a person, like, I want him to do what's best for him and his family, and if that's what's putting the most food on his table, I respect it and understand it. So, yeah, the writing aspect seems to be the thing that he's super focused on right now. We actually interested in the Keon Bell kid. Have y'all heard of him? Yeah. So definitely interested in Keon Bell. My little cousin, actually, who grew up in the house with my uncle that I'm talking about, is the one that introduced me to him. So we've been talking to him. Hopefully that's something that we can get accomplished. But being from California, what people don't know is I've always tried to get people from Cali signing us. We just never got the deal done. We tried to sign OT. Busta got to him before we did, but we were super close to that. I still got the Twitter DMs between me and OT. Me and Problem are almost like brothers. Like, we're super close friends. But you know, he's been in a situation with Diamond Lane forever, and those are my brothers. Terrence Martin is another close friend of mine, but he's on his own stuff, you know. So we've been close to attaching to a lot of the young cats earlier. So definitely looking at that. I like the new young cats that are coming out of LA though. We found Uzi. Cannon did a tape for him early in the game. At the time, he was being managed by a DJ in Philly by the name of DJ Diamond Cuts. And when Cannon did the tape for him, I think at the time it didn't really pick up as much steam as they thought it would, so they kind of went back to the drawing board, and through that process, they started to develop a real personal relationship. He came to Atlanta. At the time, we were still developing the label, so we had Scheme at the time. Scheme was here when he first came down here, and honestly, it just turned into a family organization, man. We just started working together. He started developing the sound more and more. Mine and his relationship developed. Him and Scheme's relationship developed. Him and Drum's relationship developed. We ended up taking him on tour. We actually took him on tour with Wiz before we even signed him, like, just as an opportunity, you know, and to really teach him how to perform on stage, you know, and stuff like that. And then after about 2 years, we ended up actually inking it and signing him to the deal. At the time, Scheme's deal was at E1 because Drama had a record deal at E1. So that's where we were able to take Scheme's record deal, but Drama also had a job at Atlantic as an A&R, and he was actually about to be let go as an A&R, and we walked in there and they allowed us to sign one act, and we used that act as Uzi because we couldn't take Scheme over there at the time. And what's crazy is nobody really believed in Uzi when we brought him in the office. This was before the transition of like emo, like rock star rap that he makes now. This is still when it was still like your rappers had to look like rappers, you know what I mean? So they kind of turned a side eye at it too, but they're not really doing that now, you know. I got a bunch of texts from a bunch of people. I had a close personal relationship with dude aside from the music. Had a close relationship with the music, of course. Drum did Crenshaw and did Mailbox Money. I actually remember the conversation that we had at Wakano about the idea of even doing Crenshaw, you know, and that was around the time that streaming was just starting, and he had the idea of selling the tape, you know, for $100, and how him and Drum kind of just arrived a plan right there, and I sat and watched it, and how me and him talked on the phone, and he came to Atlanta and did a whole press run for Crenshaw in Atlanta, and did the More or Less video. I found B.O.B. for him and did that video for him here. And I actually have known him for probably 6 to 8 years prior to that, just through my homeboys that I've known from the neighborhood that you know, he used to actually come out on freeway shows when we came to LA. But it's really just a fucked up situation for the city as a whole. Not even the city as a whole. Like, he's just he's a loss that's felt like worldwide. As crazy as that sounds, even though he's not as big of an artist as you think he is, like, he's an impactful artist and he's an impactful person, you know, and it just sucks to lose somebody like that, you know, in such a despicable way. Like, that's my only thing. Like, I think he just deserved to die a little, you know, in a better way. That's all. It's not cool. It still don't sit well with me at all. It's a terrible situation to be in, especially, again, like y'all knowing, you know, being from LA and knowing the politics that come with it. Like, the last thing you want to be worried about is a nigga that you've known for 10 or 15 years. But as crazy as it sounds, man, that's really how fucked up LA's demographic is, and that's something we gotta fix, you know, like, even down to, you know, in local neighborhoods, there's 5, 6 hoods that beef with each other. It's people that you've known since you're 5 years old, you know, it's people that you've known that your team, like, those shouldn't be issues. You shouldn't have any issues if you've been in their mother's house eating their food, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the killings go down like that, unfortunately. It's sad, but it is what it is. Of course, skill set, like, the ability to make good music, that's one thing. I think now more than anything, like, we look to see if it's somebody that we even want to work with, like, personality wise. You want to see how they treat their mom, you want to see how they treat their friends, just stuff like that, you know. Because once the money gets involved, that's when, you know, a lot of times these dudes can turn into monsters. So you want to see what type of people they are prior to money being involved. So that's another thing. And 3, you want to see work ethic. Just like in anything, you want to see somebody that's willing to do some work and somebody that's willing to continually try to get better at the craft that they want to be the best at. So those are the 3 things that are most important. I think we stick out like a sore thumb. I think our culture stands out. I think our tone and the way we talk stands out. I think our language stands out. I think everything about us kind of stands out. And I think us and New York, those 2 cities are the 2, like, cities that have people that want you to know where they from. You know what I'm saying? So one thing about an LA nigga is he gonna let you know you're from LA, and a New York nigga gonna let you know you're from New York. You know what I'm saying? So especially before we get, you know, in touch with what's going on with the rest of the world, you know, we think LA is better than everything. So we come out there and we dress how we dress and we look how we look and we talk how we talk. And I think it's attractive to some people, well, a lot of people actually, especially from the South, because, you know, it's a little, I don't want to call it arrogance, but it's a little swagger we got to us too, you know what I'm saying? It's a little confidence we got about us too, so I think we carry that different places, and I think just the tools that we come across, like the ability to you know, be in a room with a scholar and be in a room with a gangster is something that an LA dude can do too that a lot of people can't do, so I think that's something we use to our advantage. Yeah, I mean, it's 100% harder. It's easier to get the music out there, but it's still harder to get heard because there's so many people. Like, you know, I remember when I grew up listening to music, I didn't have so much to choose from. Number one, so the body of work that I had to decipher who was good or who was bad was way smaller, and then you had to buy the actual music physically. You know, so you were spending $15 to $20 on a CD. And at the time, you know, my mom didn't want to be giving me no $100 to buy 4 or 5 of them. So you would really have to like that person and really buy the CD. And you would get that shit. And if it sucked, you just lost your $20. You just bought a piece of shit for a dub. But it still counted as, you know, as a buy. Like, to me, these days, like, it's 100% in the consumer's hands. But if you win, it wins for the artist, because the consumer has an opportunity to sample your music if they like it or not and never play it again. You know what I mean? Or they have the ability to sample your music and love it and binge play it like your children do, who listen to the same song consistently over and over again, you know? So I think the biggest thing is about, especially hip hop, that they try to make you do is they try to change the business model consistently every 4 or 5 years, and they try to stay ahead of the curve of the artists, and the people that are successful are the people that are ahead of the curve, you know, ahead of them per se. Like, even if you trace it back to, you know, from record to tape, from tape to CD, from CD to digital, like, every time you get a grasp on it and we start owning stuff and start really getting a hold of really making the money, they change and say, well, here's this new thing, and this costs $8 to make, you know. So before we even make $1, we have to duplicate this for $8, you know. And then the business of that becomes, oh damn, well, we got to figure out how can we do this. All right, we'll get our own distribution companies, we'll get our own pressing plants. And when they do that, they'll say, all right, well, we don't need physicals anymore. Now we're just doing digital. And now, who's to say what a stream is worth? You know, who's to say if that stream is an actual fan or that's not a mom who has a playlist playing on her desk just like that and she's listening casually? All that counts as a spin. That's almost like a purchase now. So it can work in your favor, it can't work in your favor too. So it's that much harder to get people to listen, but if they are engaged, like the people love anything that Uzi says right now. You can put out a piece of shit record, they're gonna like it because they're so engaged in him. So and a person like his situation is gonna work in his favor. You know, if you show me another rapper that's gonna have a 25-year career that's still relevant at this age, like that young people still know, that have face visibility, that's gonna be tough. It's gonna be 4 or 5 guys that are gonna be like that. Like ultimately you're gonna have a 4 to 6 year career, and through that span hopefully you can develop into something bigger or better. I think with these younger cats, I think now it's not even about the music, it's more them being aligned with a moment. Like a moment is what takes these kids to the next level, whether it's Beyonce dancing to their shit or posting their shit, or whether it's a meme, or whether it's a dance or a challenge associated. These moments are what make these records, aside from, you know, because how else are kids just bumping into them? Are they just like, let me hear what Juice WRLD sounds like? It has to be a moment or a cosign or something that aligns with the artist coming out more than just them hearing the music and saying, I like it. Because the kids like what everybody else likes.
So do you guys play a part in that behind the scenes, as far as like, when you say Beyonce dancing to OT Genesis, like,
yeah.
You think his team had pull some strings to make that happen? Or?
No, I think it happens, but as soon as it happens,
yeah.
People try to take advantage of that moment immediately. Like, if you probably go back and look, the moment that she did that, I'm sure it was a huge social media campaign, and I'm sure Atlantic made flyers and was like, yeah, the song that Beyonce danced to is this. So the key is taking a moment and making that moment last as much as possible. Like, I'll give you an example. I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but the challenge that Ray Sherman did with where everybody was freezing, when they originally did that, they didn't even do that to that song, but it was a marketing guy in the office at Interscope that put the music behind the people doing the challenge, and that became a huge thing, and that made that record go ballistic, made it go out of this world, you know. So it's literally a moment. The Lil Nas X thing, like the kid was in our studio 4 months ago, like, and he made a parody record, you know, over country. This shit's so unpredictable these days. There's no telling what's going to hit, you know. So a typical marketing strategy, like back in the day, you find a dope rapper, you know he's dope, you put a 12-song CD out, you go tell the world he's dope, you go put posters everywhere, flyers everywhere, and when people hear it, they know he dope and he sells. That nigga right now might sell 5 copies, or kids might stream him 5 times. The best, biggest rapper, you know, got the most chains, buff, look like Chris Brown. That shit don't matter. You know, a kid with pink hair that looks like the kid that got made fun of in high school may be the kid that rocks these days. You never know, you know. So, yeah, well, I mean, if you have an artist that's already moving, that's the easiest thing to do. Go get their money. I always tell people, don't spend your own, go get somebody else's. Like, I related to buying a house, you know. I don't know why niggas love saying we pay cash for everything, but personally, if I go buy a $2 million house, I'm gonna put something down and get a loan because I don't know how long I'm gonna be in it. You know what I'm saying? So just personally, me, the smartest thing to do is get an artist, get that artist bubbling, go get a bag from them and use their money to get it popping. You know what I'm saying? It took a lot. What we have is solely built off Drum and Cannon, sweat equity, and my knowledge. Like solely, you know what I'm saying? So this is built off Gangsta Girls mixtapes, this is built off Cannon doing Go Crazy, Meek Mill beats, a ton of other beats. This is built off these guys going and doing gigs, you know, every weekend for years, and me managing all these people and us putting our brains together. So it's really built off like a strong, solid foundation, you know what I'm saying? So I think our biggest thing, we're not a label that really throws dollars at somebody and says, yo, you know, we're gonna give you $500,000 to put in your pocket. What we can do is put you in a position to make $15 million, you know. And I think our resources and what we bring to the table individually as well as a conglomerate is way more valuable than giving a kid some money that he's gonna blow in a week anyway. You know,
so do you like, because the people like will get money, first thing they do is get some jewelry or wait, so like do y'all like make sure like, hey yo,
that's an argument you gonna have with your artists all the time, but I just try to have the conversation I try to have with them is like understanding what an advance is and what a contract is. Like it's just like in sports, like, you know, when like I was looking at the kids on the draft and I was seeing all of them had chains on and all of them and I was wondering where they got the money from, and I was like, damn, what's sad is that some of these kids are gonna turn out to be superstars and some of them are gonna turn out to not be shit, you know, and they starting off in debt. Like, and all I try to tell my artists is when you initially sign your deal, like, that doesn't mean you made it. The pressure is actually on now because now you took a loan from a nigga that you got to pay back, you know. So I think keeping up with the Joneses shouldn't be the first thing that they should do, but it's hard for these kids because, you know, these kids come out the womb rapping and act like they got $1 million and already popping and got changed. So ideally, what I tell my artists is when you get your advance, that advance is so you can live comfortably creating your project that will create an opportunity for you to make some money. But if you go out there and buy chains, buy a watch, and buy a car, your advance is gone. And then you come back in our office looking at us crazy. And that's where a lot of the conflict between artist and label comes in because, you know, they come in and see you being a certain way, but they don't know the 15 or 20 years that's behind where you're at in this position. All they know is that they had this amount of money. They thought they were going to be a rap star faster than they spent the money. You know what I'm saying? So ideally, you want a guy to take the money and get him an apartment. Don't buy no car. What you need one for, you spending all your time in the studio. Make sure you always got food to eat. Make sure you can travel as you please. Buy some clothes when you want to. Do what you want. And put yourself in a position to make some money. So, you know, that's what I try to tell the young guys more than anything. I missed out on, I didn't understand the Migos, and my boy Pat right next door brought them in there early. And I just didn't get it at the time. And that's when I really had to realize, like, you know what? I think music is changing and I'm not changing. You know what I'm saying? So I got to be smart enough to step back. And when I missed that one, I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to hire some young niggas that can come and tell me who's on fire and trust Drum and Cannon. You know what I'm saying? And doing that. So I think that's something that I wouldn't say I missed out on, but we probably had an opportunity. And if I think I would have been more like aggressive about getting it done, that would have been something. So that would have been, what have we wasted money on? I mean, I think our biggest issue is we dive into every project like they're already a superstar. So we go all the way in, and I think the expectation of an artist is for that to happen every time. And I think we don't set a standard from a foundation anymore, and that's what we're getting back into. Like, you know, they jump in and they see the superstardom already and see the buildings and so on and so forth. So I think that's something we can do better. And as far as artists, I just see them spend money on so much frivolous stuff, man. But honestly, the biggest thing is the jet. You know, the private jet is like the biggest waste of money ever. But that's neither here.
Like owning one or just renting it to go to
Renting
places.
Yeah, because what they don't understand is like, ultimately you're doing it to avoid what? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing it to avoid? Like, they have greeters to the point where they'll drive you to a plane right now. When you get off the plane, you walk down the steps and drive you to your car. Like, it's the difference in you know, $40,000 in expenses and $3,000 in expenses. I just, you know, when you make it 100, 150 a show, I know it doesn't seem like much, but when you add it up at the end of the year, it's like, for what?
Y'all, you rocking with Leighton. Generation Now is on. Los Angeles born and bred, and you're now rocking with Laced. Los Angeles creates endless dreams.